Welcome back to Show Jumping 101. If you've ever felt the pressure of the show ring, battled competition nerves, or struggled with self-doubt, then this episode is for you. Today, we're diving into the mental side of show jumping with world-renowned sports psychologist Sandie Robertson. Working with teams and individuals, Sandie creates strategies that lead to real transformation, helping riders overcome anxiety, boost confidence, and unlock their best performances when it matters most. With a background in both mental and physical health, Sandie has helped top athletes across the globe obliterate mindset blocks so they can get back to doing what they love, riding, competing, and winning. So if you're ready to take control of your mindset and turn pressure into power, let's jump right in.
We're welcoming back Sammy and Joanne. This time we're going to be talking about mental fitness rather than just physical fitness. Sammy and Joanne work with a coach called Sandie Robertson, who helps them get into the mindset for the sport, I think, which is what we could be saying. True, guys?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think maybe you guys have a conversation with Sandie so we can find out a little bit about how it works.
Hi, Sandie.
Hi, Joanne. How are you?
Hey, Sandie.
So, Sandie and I have known each other for a long time, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's for us in the industry, I think it's important to be aware of how important the mental aspect is of it all. We're good friends as well, but you do a lot of work with riders on their confidence and various aspects like that. And also, I suppose we're just back from the States where everything's about therapy. Everything's about mental awareness and things like that. In the UK, it's just not as popular, is it?
Yeah, it's something, I guess when we started working together, seems like nearly a decade ago, you know, there's so many issues you can work on or topics you can work on. And I think the UK is better now, but certainly then, like all your competition, all my clients would be abroad. And I think that's more because in the UK, there's the stigma probably about wanting to ask for help, even if you're in a good place, wanting to be better. Or I think we come from that sort of British or UK cynicism where, you know, you're almost taught not to aim too high or not to want better, where in America they really encourage that bit. They really encourage growth and self-development and, you know, confidence and being proud to say, yeah, I want to get better or this was good. Whereas here we're not very good at complimenting ourselves or admitting that, you know, things can be better and we want to be better.
Yeah, and I think sometimes you can misinterpret confidence with arrogance.
Absolutely.
And it's not that. What people don't understand is they think sports psychology, they don't really know what the whole thing is about. And sometimes they're like, well, I don't have a problem or whatever. But what they don't realize is sometimes it's even trying to organize your thoughts. Girls, especially, I think, in the sport, overthink. Guys approach it well, obviously I'm not a guy, I have to ask Sam for his experience, but guys have a different attitude to it all. I think they go ahead and try it, and then if they fail, they fail, whereas in girls' minds, they've nearly failed before they try. I think that's something that's...
We're more daredevils, that's all.
I think women...
Tell yourself that, Sam.
Oh, we do. You know, we just tell ourselves these things, that's for sure.
I think there's a lot of overthinking with girls, especially in the sport. There's so much pressure nowadays, I think, with social media, with things like this. It's more than just the 2 minutes in the ring, that you're trying to help people with in their lives, because we've had a few clinics here and you've been, especially with some of the groups where we put them into different groups, and especially the kids, I think it was really interesting to try and eavesdrop a little bit to hear. So with the children especially, how would you go about, you know, just maybe explain a little bit what you do?
Yeah, and I think, you know, just listening to you both there talk about the differences, men are so much better at compartmentalizing things. So men are much better at being able to say, I have one job to do right now, and my job is to go and ride the horse and jump clear. Women are thinking about potentially all the travel they've organised, the family life, the finances, and 100 other things, and then thinking, gosh, I have 60 seconds to have time to myself to try and go in and jump the horse, and what if it goes wrong?
It's interesting you said this, because I always say, whenever I get on my horse, it's me on my horse. I think of nothing else. And that's really helpful in the ring, because you don't, like, I don't know if it's compartmentalizing or what it is, but I always say it's, when I'm in that ring, it's just me and the horse on our own in the world, just trying to achieve what we can, the best we can achieve. So it's just interesting you just said that, you know, difference between men and women in that part.
I think also it's very difficult because women wear so many hats, and I'm not saying that men don't, but usually there's also the guilt complex with women, especially when you have children. You feel like you should be with the children, but when you're riding, you feel you should be with the children. When you're with the children, you feel you should be riding. And there's always that inner battle in yourself to do the best you can. I think that's something that sports psychology as well, for me, it trains someone to actually learn to actually stay in the present, not overthink the future and worry about the past. And I think that for me is a major thing, because I think a lot of our lives we're caught up in what happened before. Especially you had a big accident yourself, me over the years, different things. And I think that's a very important thing of what you do, no?
Absolutely. And I think it's about giving yourself permission to have that space and to own that space, and for it to be okay for you to want to do something just for yourself. You know, because so many of the pressures that come into equestrianism, there is no other sport like the sport that we do. You know, there are other sports that have teammates or have partners or other, I don't know what you'd call it, really, utensils, but nothing else has all the variables that equestrianism has. You know, you can be in your we all know too well, you can be in your very best day and it turns out to be your very worst day in a crushing second. Or likewise, you can not ride your best, but your horse pulls it out the bag for you that day as well. You know, or you spend 13 hours in a plane and the horse comes out lame, or you lose a sponsor, or you lose a rider, a saddle's not fitting. There are so many different things that affect our performance. So being able to I guess, build up that sort of psychological or emotional resilience, especially when you're jumping from horse to horse, to be able to say, this was an isolated incident. Now here we are, what can we do with this second?
Well, it's also very interesting what you're saying, because I watch a lot of sport and I watch a lot of documentaries on different sport. And the major aspect in all these sports is the mental state. No matter how good you are, mental state is so important. It sometimes make you not reach what you can reach just because you are mentally unable to. When you come to a certain point and you want to pass it, you're not able to pass it, and that's just because you have a mental block of some sort. And like I said, I've heard that from many top athletes in different sports. But what's more important in show jumping is, if these guys are, like you're saying, using tools and it's just them on their own performing against somebody else, we have another soul in play. We have horses in play, so, and they feel everything we feel. So how important is it for us to have mental clarity and mental stability and our mental state to be as high as it can, to provide those horses also with the same kind of mental stability and mental resilience, that we both go in the ring and give it our best shot, not just me give it my best shot or the horse giving it their best shot and I'm blocking them, or vice versa. So it's a partnership that is so important, that we're both going into that competition or that ring in the most in as stable, mentally stable as possible, and try to, like I put it in my own words, forget what's happening prior to that. Is just you and your horse in that ring. So
yeah, and I think as well, it's got, as show jumping becomes more glamorous, which is very good for the industry, but the environments that horses are being put into now are like circus environments. And on top of that, quite often, tack is different, the clothes you're wearing is different, their feed times hopefully aren't different, but there are a lot of different variables. It may be traveling grooms, it may be, there's so many things that they're not familiar with. So we get on in a different state, breathing quickly, stressed, hurried up on our phone, trying to walk the course. We expect them to not be like, holy crap, something's really wrong up there. This must be terrifying. I'm now really worried. And then we wonder why it all goes wrong. So if we can create that state that no matter where you are in the world, that every time you meet your horse, you greet your horse and you get on your horse, you're bringing that same state, then no matter what they're seeing, they're like, ah, it's cool. I know this bit. I know how to do this.
Yeah, quite fascinating actually. And you mentioned their your team or your staff, your whole team around you. I find it personally, if the team around me is in good spirits and motivated and encouraged, if let's say my best is 100, I give 150 just because everybody around me is pushing in the same direction. So it's quite important that not just me and my horse, it's actually the whole team, partners, owners, grooms, farriers, everybody's pushing in the same direction. So it just proves what I'm trying to say is that mental state in show jumping, especially, or any sport, is so important, and you gather so many vibes from everybody around you, not just yourself.
I think also people get themselves into almost like a shutdown mode. I think little things, and what you don't realize is a little bit each day. It's not, for a lot of people, it's not one big incident. It's a series of small things that eventually cause the blockage there, the mental block, and it's something that they want to do so much, but they find that their brain is actually holding them back. Like someone coming to you, for example, and there's something going on, like they find themselves, the horse is stopping, they find themselves, whatever, not wanting to go in the ring. I mean, is there any sort of very basic tips from the start where you can, I know it's a very long process, but what would you yourself, as a guide, give someone initially coming to you? What would you say to them?
So just as you described it there, things happen in a process. So we call that stacking anchors. So one day the horse will spook at a leave and the rider might be a bit worried. The next day they'll spook at the bin. The next day they won't want to go in the arena. So that catalogue, that cascade of things starts from a small thing, but the rider's confidence ebbs and ebbs till they get to the point where it's like, now it's doing this, now it's doing that. I can't even do this anymore. The horse starts to think, oh God, I can't go anywhere anymore. She's having a complete break, or he is having a complete breakdown. And what really fixes that is positive reinforcement. But it's hard to feel positive when when you feel at your lowest. So starting to build yourself really small, simple tasks that may seem really basic, but something that you can do with your horse, whether that's leading it, whether it's doing a cross pull, whether it's going for a hack, whatever makes you feel good, helps to reinforce that bit's still there, and then setting yourself small challenges until you're almost bored of staying in that safe space. So you're building that confidence, because without getting too technical, the way your subconscious mind works, no matter what we think it believes, so if we are thinking all these things about not being able to do it, about not being good enough, about everybody else looking better or being better, then when our mind gets to that place, we think, oh, I've seen this before, I know how this is going to go, so I'm going to make you feel a certain way to take you away from danger, which is where that anxiety or fight or flight comes from. So if we do even the most basic things where we're building that positive feeling and positive reinforcement, that part of our mind sees that, and that's where the actual feeling of confidence grows from as well.
So fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
And actually, it's like, even, over the years, obviously the big thing for always myself personally has been injuries, recoveries, and it's carrying a fear. It's like the fear of failure, I suppose, is a big thing for a lot of people as well. And it's actually, I think it gets to the point that they just can't see past that. Obviously there's people like yourself or whatever, but what would you advise? Initially, if someone is sitting at home right now and they're thinking, I don't want to do this anymore, this is miserable, this is horrible. How do they work through in their head, well, is this just because of this, or do I genuinely want to give up the sport? What would you say?
I think there's two things in that. There's first one, you talk about injuries, and usually it's not the injury that stops us doing it anymore, it's the consequence. It's oh God, I've chosen to do this for myself and now I can't ride, or now I can't pay my bills, or now I can't work. So we do the catastrophic thinking And I think a really good way to come back from that is remember, and genuinely, like you and I have had this conversation many times, like remember why you started it. And if it is just for sport, it may be that time out of the sport is what you need, until you miss it, or you go back to basics and you go back to training and you do it in a really professional, sportsmanship, pragmatic like way. Or the nicest thing, because all of us do this because you love horses, you couldn't do it. I mean, it would be the worst job in the world if you hated the animals. So I think coming back to, whether it's looking at videos or photos or coming back to the reasons that you did it, and reconnecting to that part without setting yourself too many challenges, especially if we're busy or low or flat, the worst thing you can do is ride your trickiest horse around the hardest track, because we don't have an expendable energy resource. So if our energy's at a 3 and you're giving yourself a challenge that's a 50, that's not the day to do it. So doing the things, ride your favourite horse, watch your winning $1 million, all of the things that make you connect with being like, I can do this, I want to do this. And then seek help, have a network around you that makes sure you're doing it in a way that keeps pushing you forward and not in a way that you get to a level where you keep crumbling back, because then, as we all know, it's harder to get back to that starting point.
No, I have an interesting question because we were mentioned before the difference between men and women, but nowadays, and not just nowadays, like, I don't know, 10 years ago, maybe more, there's so many amazing women athletes out there in different sports. Like obviously in show jumping, there's plenty that Joanne and I know that have competed at the top level, had kids, had injuries, came back, jumped Olympic games, won Olympic medals. And there's others in other sports, they talk about tennis, for instance, Serena Williams. There's so many women with so much resilience and so much mental ability that actually could and somehow exceeds men's mental ability in that sense. We watch these, I call them amazing athletes because they are amazing. Their stories, when you read a little bit or watch their documentaries and whatever, where they came from and what they have done and what they have achieved is incredible stories and incredible achievements. Is that because people are getting more, or let's say like people in general are getting more clever of trying to seek help or trying to find out or figure out their, what brings them down and overcome that? Like why is that changing in the last decade, for instance, or even more?
It's a good question. Is it changing? Because there's always going to be that top percentile of athletes who have that, like the best of the best. They have that emotional resilience, and it's almost, much as I hate to say it, people who are able to be selfish enough, and I don't mean that in a derogatory term, but selfish enough to be like, this is what I have to do. I can do all of this other stuff, but I have to park that on the outside, and this is what I have to do to make my dreams come true. And I think women, when they can switch on to that, can at times be mentally tougher because they've been through more often. I don't like it to turn into a man-woman kind of thing, but we do have different strengths, and what women tend to have more of is stamina.
Yeah.
So men are very focused, but tend to be focused for shorter bursts, whereas women can be really, really intensely focused for.
Yeah, it's just interesting because obviously there's again so many sports now with like even football. There's so many team sports, and it's just incredible to watch and amazing stories. I must say it was just interesting to ask the
But
question.
then also it's been there's been examples like Serena or those girls that have gone through periods of they've completely they've gone out of it and come back.
But that's every athlete, in my
Because they've
opinion.
had that, and not just women. Like you see it with top golfers, they go through they can't even hit a ball. So it's not just our sport that this is happening in, and it is relevant because I think it's something that we need to start being comfortable with. Is realizing that sometimes what we think is holding us back can be helped, and there is simple things that we can do.
Yeah, and also being realistic that you cannot be amazing every single day. Otherwise, everybody would be at the same level. There would be no variable in sport. And I work with footballers and golfers as well. And it's trying to manage that, isn't it? It's trying to know how to create your your best self at the time that it matters, but allow yourself time to be off the hook the rest of the time. But I do think the more, Netflix series we have and the more profile this sort of hugely important part of the sport has, the more profile it's getting, the better for everyone. Because the thing that helps me, or would have helped me at the time, and helps me when I'm working with other people, I'm like, God, they would never, for example, somebody jumping fox hunter would never for a second think Joanne or Sam had a day off or had a nervous day or was worried about a horse or worried about their rounds. And if for them just to know that you are top athletes, but you're human beings, that really helps people think, oh, actually.
I think that's a good answer to the question I just asked. It's just more approachable. People are talking, are more vocal about it. Top athletes are more vocal about it. They speak about it. They speak about their mental struggles. So then other athletes or younger athletes, or even somebody, like you said, jumping a fox hunter, well, if such and such is having a problem, then it's not a big issue that I'm having the same problem. It's normal. It's normal for everyone. And when it's normal, it's become a lot easier to accept as a person, if I'm right. Yeah.
And also, like, for example, we were talking about the kids, like as a parent yourself and as a parent with kids, yours aren't at that stage yet, but when they're actually jumping themselves, how do we be as parents supportive without intrusion,
By staying away.
Yeah. What's the best, for a parent, what the best tips that you would give a parent, in terms of with their child?
You're putting me into dangerous territory here, Joanne.
I like to ask the tough questions, Sandie.
I think so. Support is the important word, isn't it? Like it's being supportive without being too intrusive. Much as I probably viewers are not going to enjoy this next sentence, but what I see a lot in children being absolutely crushed is parents trying to relive their dreams or ambitions through the child. So they may have a time scale or a view or a dream that they want the child to be ready in, and they may not be at that place in their riding career or their emotional development career or their confidence career, or even worse, sometimes you see them riding things that you're like, holy God, I would struggle to lead that, never mind ride it. So I think there's always the assumption that children are braver or that their confidence almost doesn't matter because they're children. And that can be a real pivotal turning point in their life as to how the support and the development they're allowed to do through that time. But equally, it can be very frustrating for the family who are investing a lot to allow them to have that time. So
I actually, that's a really important point where you're coming from. Actually, I see it a lot because obviously on the outside looking in, and also with my own child, but I do see a lot of pressure on children that the parents don't realize they're putting the pressure on because this sport is so expensive. And I do feel sometimes that kids, even though we mightn't directly say it, it's inferred that they need to go better, they need to, and they're putting this excess pressure on. And I think it's something that we need to be very aware of in this sport. As I say, I have seen it myself, and then I see kids leaving the sport that I think, well, they're really talented. And the parent, if you sat the parent down, they would never ever think that they were doing anything wrong. I don't feel it's something that they're deliberately doing, but I do think it's a pressure that exists, and maybe it's something that people don't talk about but should talk about, that sometimes we don't realise how much external pressure we put on the children without realising.
And how perceptive, sorry, Sam, and how perceptive they are to that. And 90% of teens or children that I work with will say, my parents don't put any pressure on me, but I put it on myself because I know of the sacrifice, or because I know what they want from me, or because they want me to do it. And then there's other 10% where they're like, my parents absolutely have to tell me you have to do this, and that is what it is. But of course they want to please their family, so there's a lot of different elements in that.
Well, quickly on that subject, actually, I'll just go back to my young riders' riding age, and I felt that. I never felt it from my parents, but I had 4 horses in livery. I used to go and ride them every day after school or after uni. Sometimes my friends came with me, watch me ride, and then we hang out for half an hour after or something. So I was always feeling that I'm missing out. And then obviously there's a lot. I used to take the whatever the expenses from my parents and go and pay the club for the horses livery, for the farriers, for this, for that, all the things. And then I sold all my horses, and then I decided I'm actually going to stop. And I stopped for a month. I did not ride, and I just went out with my friends, and I said, it's too much responsibility for me at that age. In my head, I wasn't saying that, but I just felt the pressure, even though my parents and they were really very supportive. And I stopped for a month, and I was not riding, and that was it. And my dad actually just bought me a horse, even though I said I don't want it, because I didn't want that pressure anymore. And I remember my mom and my brother came to me and spoke with me. He said, why don't you want to ride? I said, no, it's too much. I have a lot to do. I studied medicine, obviously, as well. So it was taking a lot of my time. And so then they had a conversation without me, and they all agreed they're going to buy this mare no matter what. And inside of me, I wanted them to buy the horse, but what I was saying was I didn't want to ride because I didn't want the responsibility anymore. And then, they bought this horse, came from Germany, and the rest was history. Like 25 years later, I'm still here. So I really felt that kind of pressure on kids, and it's normal. And I just want to say that it happens to everybody, and it's a lot of expenses, and it's a lot of this and a lot of that, but it's not really the parents' fault sometimes. It's just also genuine kids feel that pressure. But it is normal for everyone. That's what I want to say. Everybody feels it. And it's a stage you have to pass through and power through to get to the other side of a great story, everybody hopes.
And I think parents have to realize that and maybe speak with their children and actually reassure them that this is something that they want with them, but that the child is always free to not actually do it. Because not every child actually wants to compete. I mean, I have 3 girls and they're all different, and they all want to jump at a different level or ride, or some of them just want to sit on a horse for fun. Some want to compete. And so I think as parents, even though we really, really want them to be in the sport, I think we have to ourselves back away and just accept the fact that it's just not going to happen.
I think for adults or for children, or no matter who it is, the minute horses become everything is the most dangerous place to be, because then your identity's in it, your family, everything is in it. So you have a fence and your universe collapses. There has to be balance. So there has to be friendship groups, there has to be perspective, there has to be life outside it. And that's hard, because I think we were all brought up to be like, if you want it, it's got to be absolutely everything. There can't be anything else in the world apart from that. But I think it's always a controversial topic when I say it, but it shouldn't be all about the horse. There has to be a bit left for you, otherwise it's just not sustainable.
I think so, and I think we were talking about this earlier. Kids are now having more of a professional mindset too early. I mean, it's good, like we work with Irish, she trains or whatever, but as Sam was saying before, it has to be fun.
It's not ideal, the
and
situation
as parents,
at the moment,
we have to encourage the fun aspect of it. We have to remember this is something we're doing. At this age, they're doing this for fun. It's recreation. It might be their life, but it maybe not. So I think that's important to emphasize as well at this stage. And actually, senior riders like us have to also be aware of that when we're speaking.
Yeah, that it's a hobby. At a certain stage of life, it has to be a hobby, not your profession, until it becomes your profession. But it has to start as a hobby until if you're good at it, you like it, you love it that much that you want it to be your profession. I think this is how it should be, introduced to kids, that it's your hobby. If you want to do it, fine. If you love it, then we go and do training. If you don't, you want a week off, no problem. It shouldn't be like every day you have to go and ride and this and that, until a certain stage anyway, and then that can change.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really nice almost way to finish on, is when you said, how do you get confidence back, or how do you enjoy it again, taking that mindset of the way it was when it was a hobby, because there's that old saying that the minute you start being paid for something is the fastest way to fall out of love with it, isn't it? Like when you're a hobby, you love it. The minute you have to do it and all the responsibility that comes with that brings a whole new set of baggage almost with it.
True.
Brilliant. As always, lovely to talk, Sandie.
Did you?
Thank you for that. And I just really hope that people can get some benefit from listeners,
Perspective,
to
I
us
think, is
chatting.
the best way to put it. I think it just everything has to be put in perspective, regardless what it is and what you're doing. If you have an idea of what you're doing and why are you doing it for, I think it does help achieve what you want.
And maybe if people are watching this, and they can maybe reach out to yourself or someone else if they just feel at that stage and maybe be a bit kinder to themselves.
Yeah, and I think having someone to talk to that isn't biased at all really helps when it comes to horses, because everyone has an opinion or a vested interest in what you're doing, even if they don't realise it. So yeah, impartial advice is always good.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
What an incredible conversation with Sandie Robertson. Hopefully, you're walking away with some game-changing strategies to tackle nerves, build confidence, and bring your best self to the show ring. Remember, mental strength is just like physical fitness. It takes work, but the results can be magic. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe so you never miss an insight-packed conversation like this one. And if you found Sandie's advice helpful, share it with a friend who could use a little mental boost in their riding. You can also follow Sycamore Stables and Samer El Dahan on social media for more behind-the-scenes training tips and insights from the show jumping world. Until next time, stay focused, stay confident, and go ride your best round.